Dandelion is, it has been definitely a labor of love. It's a conversation about the idea that the diaspora is not a monolith. And there's so much nuance and diversity that exists within the Black world. It's a conversation about the nuance that exists in Black masculinity, and this idea that Black masculinity is not this very rigid, cisgender, hyper masculine, like anti-feminine thing, but it's like a phenomenon that's encompassing of like so much, right? And so much of our experiences as a people here in the States and abroad. And it is also a conversation, it's an intergenerational conversation about pride and dignity and grace, about joy as resistance, dressing up as an act of resistance, because as a people, what I find, particularly within like activist, circles, is that, we're doing this work and we're fighting against oppression consistently, right? We're fighting against our annihilation, fighting against white supremacy. And so to dress up is an act of resistance. Like that is an expression of our humanity. And it's also very ritualistic in nature. And so I think that as a people, when we're actually conceiving of our liberation and our freedom, we have to think about like, what does it look like to be free? So we're struggling, and then what? And so dandyism, I think, is a part of that conversation. It's an old conversation, and yet it's new, it's contemporary, and it's futuristic at the same time. I am so excited about Dandelion coming to Atlanta. I'm from the South. You can hear my New Orleans accent. I'm from the NO. And Atlanta, the South, is definitely a part of who I am and why I even started this project to begin with. I thought about the men in my family, the men who got dressed up. Being here in Atlanta, which has been like a metropolis for Black people for so many years. I mean, the boys came here and did work, and he's like central to the work that I do, and central to like how I see the world and my own work. Just so much happened here in Atlanta historically, and so I think Dandelion is a part of that trajectory, like the idea of people who were on the front lines of the civil rights movement dressing up. The fact that some of the first Black free communities existed in and around Atlanta, where Black people in Reconstruction were building and creating lives for themselves that were very self-determined. We have our HBCUs, like an epicenter here in Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark, and Morris Brown. And so it's just critical that we are constantly able to be in conversation with each other, amongst each other. What better place to do that than Atlanta? I am a daughter of New Orleans, first and foremost. I am a Howard graduate. I am a Lukumi Shango priest. I travel around the world, like studying our culture, our history, looking at the links that exist between Black people around the diaspora. And I'm a storyteller, essentially. I use art, I use my curatorial practice as a means by which to tell stories that I think are important, whether it's about Black dandyism, whether it's about sexual violence against Black girls, whether it's about the contemporary Black South, or African spiritual traditions. These are all stories that either they've been told or they've been told through a specific lens, in which we've oftentimes been othered. And so I think, there are thousands and millions of stories that are yet to be told. And so I look at my work as a curator, essentially as a storyteller. And I'm always thinking about not just the work itself and not just like the practice of art and how it's made and how it's produced. Sometimes I feel like there's a very Eurocentric kind of way of looking at art, but like what is the contextualization behind that work? Like, so when an artist creates work, like what are they referencing in terms of, I think about artists like Allison Janae Hamilton, like she's referencing images in her mind from the farms that, her family have owned for generations, and Fahamu Peku, and the work that he's referencing in terms of like African spirituality. And so I'm always thinking about like the context of the work and how it functions. And so that's been important to me as a curator.